The morning sun bled over the Morrison Formation. Mist clung to the valley floor, turning the herds of Apatosaurus and Camarasaurus into grey silhouettes moving through the haze. To the herbivores, the day began with the same rituals of survival: feeding, watching, listening. To the predator that watched them from the ridge, it began with calculation. Its name would one day be etched into stone and whispered through museum halls: Allosaurus fragilis, the different lizard. But here, 150 million years ago, it was simply the hunter. 8 meters long, weighing 2 tons, built not for endurance but for the burst, the sprint, the strike, the final collapse of its prey. Every muscle in its body was an argument for motion. A head as long as a man was tall, teeth curved backward like hooks, eyes set forward for depth and judgment. It was not a mindless killer. It was geometry made flesh, every hunter theorem, every killer proof. The anatomy of a killer. Allosaurus was born from the physics of its world. The air was thick, the heat unrelenting, the prey immense. To survive, a predator needed more than speed, it needed impact. Unlike later carnivores that relied on crushing power, Allosaurus was built to slash. Its skull was light, almost delicate, with a hinge that let its jaws open to 80 degrees, the bite not crushing but cleaving. When it struck, it used its entire neck like a hammer, driving serrated teeth into flesh, tearing with the motion of its body rather than the strength of its bite. Paleontologists would one day call it the hatchet technique. The Allosaurus didn't kill like a cat or crocodile. It attacked like a machine. Its head descended, struck, withdrew, struck again, until arteries emptied and the ground ran dark. Its forelimbs, though short, were deadly. 3 thick fingers ending in claws longer than kitchen knives. The hands gripped, anchored, pulled prey into range, a grappling hook in muscle and sinew. Its tail, long and muscular, was the counterbalance that let the whole body pivot on a dime. Each movement was rehearsed over millions of years of evolution. The Allosaurus was not a creature of chance. It was the product of perfect refinement, a predator honed by endless failure into success. The territory. From Colorado to Portugal, its fossils paint the map of an empire. During the late Jurassic, the continents were still cousins. North America and Europe joined by island chains and shallow seas. Forests of conifers and cycads blanketed the land. Rivers carved floodplains rich with life. The Morrison ecosystem was crowded with giants. Diplodocus, Apatosaurus, Brachiosaurus, Camarasaurus. Thousands of tons of herbivore biomass moved across its plains. It was a banquet that could support an apex predator in abundance, and competition followed. There was Ceratosaurus, older, shorter, with a blade-like horn on its snout. There was Torvosaurus, heavier, slower, but terrifying in close quarters. Each filled a niche in the grand equation of survival. But Allosaurus dominated the middle ground, fast enough to chase, strong enough to kill, smart enough to endure. Its bones tell the story of constant conflict: healed ribs, fractured skulls, bite marks that match its own teeth. The predators fought each other as often as they hunted prey. Territory was life. A carcass meant meat, water, and status, and every rival was a threat to all three. The hunt. The heat shimmered off the plain. A small herd of Stegosaurus grazed near the riverbank, plates flashing bronze in the sunlight. Their tails, the thagomizers, swung lazily, each spike capable of puncturing armor. The Allosaurus watched from cover, its yellow eyes fixed on the smallest adult, slower, limping. It crept forward, each step measured in heartbeats. Then, in a silence broken only by cicadas, the valley exploded. The predator sprinted, dust billowing behind it. The herd scattered, not in panic, but in precision, adults forming a wall, young darting toward the trees. The limping one faltered. The hunter lunged. Its jaws closed on muscle and hide. A scream tore through the air. The Stegosaurus swung its tail in a blur. The spike missed by inches, slicing through air where the predator's ribs had been moments before. The Allosaurus struck again, head driving down like an axe. Bones splintered. The prey collapsed. It was over in less than a minute. When the dust settled, vultures of the Jurassic, ornitholestes and primitive pterosaurs, circled overhead. The Allosaurus fed first. The rest would wait their turn. Predators killed to live, not to enjoy. But in that moment, under the red sun, it owned the world. The cycle of blood. No predator hunts forever. The bones of young Allosaurus show how high the price of survival was. Nearly half died before adulthood. Injuries, starvation, the jaws of rivals. But those that lived learned quickly. They hunted in loose groups, not packs in the mammalian sense, but temporary coalitions. Evidence from bone beds in Utah shows multiple Allosaurus skeletons entangled around the same carcass, perhaps drawn by the smell of blood, perhaps by opportunity. Cooperation or competition, no one can say. But evolution rewards whatever works. The old fed first. The young learned by watching, when to strike, when to retreat, when to wait for the wounded to falter. And sometimes, when hunger was cruel and meat was scarce, they fed on their own. Cannibalism was not cruelty. It was efficiency. The Allosaurus was no moral creature. It was nature in its rawest form, the physics of survival written in flesh. The reign. For nearly 10 million years, Allosaurus ruled the Western Hemisphere. Its lineage spread across Europe, Africa, and the Americas. Wherever there was open ground and prey, its descendants thrived. It lived through floods, through droughts, through forest fires that blackened the sky. Its eggs hatched in nests built near water, young growing fast in the long, wet seasons. Juveniles likely filled smaller ecological roles, chasing Dryosaurus or scavenging carrion, nature's apprentices, perfecting their art. When the climate shifted, Allosaurus adapted. When prey evolved armor, it refined its tactics. When rivals grew larger, it grew faster. It was not the biggest predator of its time, but it was the most successful. Its fossils outnumber those of any other large carnivore of the Jurassic by 10 to 1. That is the signature of dominance not through chance, but through design. The decline. But no apex lasts forever. By 145 million years ago, the world was changing. Volcanoes tore through the crust as Pangaea fractured further. New continents formed, climates hardened, and food chains faltered. The herds of Diplodocus dwindled. The lush floodplains dried into scrubland. For a hunter that relied on size and ambush, the loss of cover and prey spelled slow starvation. In the fossil record, the story of decline is subtle. Gaps where once there were bones, ghost layers of sediment where the name Allosaurus disappears. In its place came successors, Torvosaurus, Ceratosaurus, and eventually new predators built for the emerging Cretaceous world. No meteor, no plague, just the slow arithmetic of change. The master of the Jurassic yielded to time. The legacy of the hunter. When paleontologists uncovered the first Allosaurus bones in the 1870s, they found a skeleton so complete it seemed to stand waiting. Jaws half open, claws curved, tail poised, as if frozen mid-charge for 150 million years. What they discovered was more than a fossil. It was a revelation of design, proof that nature's engineers had long ago solved the puzzle of the perfect predator. Every modern raptor, every big cat, every eagle's dive owes something to that blueprint. Speed balanced by strength, power guided by precision. In the museums of the modern world, children stand beneath its reconstructed skeletons, staring upward in silence. They see teeth and terror. But the bones tell a deeper truth. Allosaurus was not a monster. It was the inevitable answer to its time, a creature born of balance, evolved for mastery, and ended by change. It lived, it killed, it died, and the Earth moved on. But in that brief geological heartbeat, it ruled a planet. And the echoes of its footsteps still thunder through the stone. Herb transition, the age of giants. The Jurassic dawn breaks across an endless canopy of green. Mist curls above ferns taller than men. Conifers stretch toward the clouds. The air is heavy with the sweet rot of ancient forests. And in the center of that living sea, a shadow rises, immense, slow, deliberate. A creature that bends the horizon. Its neck lifts like the mast of a ship into the fog, each breath deep enough to stir branches. The sunlight catches its hide, pale, slate gray, streaked with mud and pollen. This is Brachiosaurus altithorax, the high-chested lizard. At 80 feet long and 40 tons, it is one of the greatest living things to ever walk the earth. If Allosaurus was the sword of the Jurassic, Brachiosaurus is its cathedral. The architecture of a giant. To build a body like this required evolutionary genius. The Brachiosaurus was not merely large, it was engineered for its size. Its neck alone stretched nearly 30 feet, each vertebra shaped like a sculpted bridge arch. Inside those bones, air sacs, vast, hollow chambers, lightened the weight without sacrificing strength. The same design would later appear in birds. Nature does not waste its best ideas. Its forelegs were longer than its hind legs, a rarity among sauropods. This posture lifted the shoulders, tilting the body forward, allowing the neck to reach the treetops with minimal strain. Its heart, half a ton of pulsing muscle, had to pump blood nearly 6 meters upward to its brain. The pressure required would have killed most creatures. But Brachiosaurus evolved valves, reservoirs, and an immense vascular network to defy gravity itself. Its lungs worked like bellows, air flowing in a continuous cycle through multiple chambers. Each inhale and exhale moved hundreds of liters of air, enough to keep the titanic muscles oxygenated during the slow, endless climb toward the next mouthful of leaves. Every heartbeat, every breath, was a triumph of design over physics. The Brachiosaurus was proof that life could break the rules and survive. The world of the giant. 155 million years ago, the world was warm and wet. The great inland seas of North America turned the Morrison Basin into a patchwork of river deltas, fern meadows, and conifer forests. The air was dense with moisture and oxygen. The land teemed with life. Here, Brachiosaurus reigned as the living skyscraper of the Jurassic. Its herds moved like floating continents, slowly, silently, reshaping the world beneath their feet. Every tree felled by their feeding opened the canopy to sunlight, giving birth to meadows of ferns. Every ton of waste fertilized the ground, feeding new generations of plants. The giants were not destroyers, they were gardeners of deep time. Their movement sculpted the ecosystem as rivers sculpt stone. Below them, smaller dinosaurs thrived in the shadow. Dryosaurus, Camptosaurus, and herds of young Apatosaurus used the giants' footprints as watering holes after rain. Insects swarmed over their hides. Pterosaurs perched on their backs, picking off parasites. Even predators respected them. Allosaurus could kill the weak, but only through cunning or misfortune. A healthy adult Brachiosaurus was untouchable, too tall to attack, too heavy to topple. When they walked, the ground itself trembled, and the lesser creatures gave way. The engine of endurance. To sustain such mass, the Brachiosaurus needed constant fuel, nearly a ton of vegetation every day. But eating was not a struggle, it was ritual. Its peg-shaped teeth stripped leaves cleanly from branches. Each mouthful was swallowed almost whole. The stomach, vast as a truck, churned the plant matter for days. Fermentation replaced chewing, chemical digestion over mechanical force. The gases released could inflate the lungs of an elephant. And yet, the creature's body handled it with silent efficiency. To eat was to live was to move. Herds traveled hundreds of miles following the monsoon rains. Their migration patterns shaped entire ecosystems, ensuring that no forest was stripped bare, no floodplain left untouched for long. The Brachiosaurus was not merely a consumer. It was a cornerstone, a biological engine that kept the Jurassic machine running. The rhythm of the herd. Imagine it, dawn on the floodplain. The air is heavy with mist, the river a mirror of gold. Through the haze, they appear, silhouettes taller than trees, necks swaying in rhythm, each footfall a whispering drumbeat through the mud. Calves move close to their mothers, heads brushing against bellies for reassurance. Adolescents travel at the flanks, half the size of their elders but already immense. Adults lead from the center, their steps precise and patient. There are no roars, no bellows of dominance, only low, resonant calls, deep enough to vibrate through the ground. Scientists believe these low-frequency sounds, infrasound, carried for miles, allowing herds to communicate across vast distances. A Brachiosaurus in one valley could feel the presence of another beyond the horizon. It was not intelligence in the human sense, but it was connection, a kind of prehistoric empathy written in vibration and instinct. When danger approached, a stalking Allosaurus, a flash flood, a forest fire, the herd responded as one. The young moved inward. The largest turned outward. The formation itself became defense, a wall of bone and muscle, unassailable to anything that walked the earth. Stegosaurus, the guardian of the Jurassic. The noon sun burned high above the Morrison Basin, baking the mudflats into clay and painting the air with the smell of resin and dust. From the shimmering haze emerged a silhouette unlike any other, a walking fortress of bone and muscle. Plates like sails rose from its spine in two jagged rows, each one catching the light like molten bronze. Its tail ended in 4 lethal spikes that gleamed with dried sap and dust. This was Stegosaurus stenops, the shield of the Jurassic. A creature of paradox, slow yet powerful, gentle yet deadly, stupid yet unstoppable. Where Allosaurus ruled with precision and Brachiosaurus with scale, Stegosaurus ruled with defiance. It was not a hunter nor a builder, but a survivor, a a creature whose very anatomy was a dare to the predators that stalked it. Its story is not one of domination, but of endurance, the art of existing in a world built for giants. The design of defense. Evolution forged Stegosaurus in the language of armor. Its spine carried 17 plates, some over 2 feet tall, each fused directly to the skin rather than bone. These plates were not shields, too thin to block claws or teeth, but billboards of survival. Rich in blood vessels, they flushed red when the animal was threatened, transforming it into a living warning signal. Its brain was barely the size of a walnut, smaller than a dog's. But the creature didn't need cunning. It needed instincts, reflexes, and a body that could turn physics into protection. Its back arched high above short, stocky forelimbs, tilting the torso downward like a living rampart. Behind it, the tail, armed with 4 sharp spikes, each 3 feet long, swung with bone-cracking power. This was the Thagomizer, a word born in jest by cartoonist Gary Larson but now immortalized in science. Every motion of that tail was an act of geometry and violence. When Allosaurus attacked from the flank, Stegosaurus could pivot on its hind legs, bringing the spikes in a deadly horizontal arc. Fossil evidence confirms this precision. A Allosaurus vertebra discovered with a clean puncture wound the size of a spear tip. The wound healed. The predator lived. But the message was clear. Stegosaurus was no easy meal. The landscape of the shield. In the late Jurassic, the western interior of North America was a shifting mosaic of rivers and floodplains. Seasonal rains turned lowlands into swamps. Droughts reduced them to dust and bone. Among the ferns and cycads, Stegosaurus grazed, not on treetops like Brachiosaurus, but on the lush undergrowth that covered the forest floor. Its beak, sharp as shears, clipped soft shoots and leaves. Rows of blunt teeth ground the vegetation into pulp, though slowly, inefficiently. It moved in small groups, family herds of 4 to 6. Adults kept to the flanks. Juveniles stayed in the center. They spoke in low rumbles. Vibrations carried through the earth more than the air. To predators, the sound was a warning, the heartbeat of the armored ones. Everywhere they walked, they left trenches in the mud, shallow impressions that fossilized into history. Some tracks show pairs moving side by side, perhaps mates, perhaps companions. They were not social like birds or mammals, but neither were they solitary. Their survival depended on presence, the collective illusion of invincibility. The shadow of the hunter. Where there is armor, there is always something to test it. For Stegosaurus, that something was Allosaurus fragilis. The two species coexisted for nearly 3 million years, predator and prey locked in a mathematical stalemate. In the fossil record, their bones are often found together. At the Cleveland Lloyd Quarry in Utah, hundreds of Allosaurus fossils are mixed with fragments of Stegosaurus plates and spikes, evidence of battles fought and lost. These were not quick kills. They were wars of attrition. Picture it. A herd of Stegosaurus moves through a dry riverbed. Dust clings to their plates, shimmering under the sun. A pair of Allosaurus emerges from the trees, circling, calculating. The largest female swings her tail, slicing the air. The predators faint, darting in to test the defense. Then the moment comes, too close, too fast. The Thagomizer connects. Bone meets bone. One predator falls, screaming, its ribs shattered. The herd does not wait. They move on, slow but certain, the rhythm of survival unbroken. This was nature's equation. For every Allosaurus that ate, one risked death. For every Stegosaurus that fell, another learned faster, swung harder, lived longer. It was not intelligence that won, it was pattern. The rhythm of existence. Life for Stegosaurus was not heroic, it was cyclical. Wake, graze, watch, defend, sleep. The herd moved with the seasons, from the highlands in the wet months to the low valleys when drought came. Females laid clutches of eggs in sandy nests, covering them with ferns and soil. The hatchlings emerged no larger than a turkey, defenseless and quick. Their plates were soft, pliable, no armor yet, only promise. Few survived. Predators, drought, disease, all took their share. But enough lived to continue the lineage. In the fossil record, juvenile Stegosaurus bones are rare, but when found, they show growth lines like the rings of a tree, each year of survival a victory over probability. The sound of survival. What did a Stegosaurus sound like? No one can know for sure, but we can imagine. Its lungs were vast, its chest cavity resonant. It may have bellowed low, the sound traveling through the ground like distant thunder. To another Stegosaurus miles away, that vibration would mean one thing: I am here. Imagine that sound rolling across the floodplain, bouncing off cliffs and forest canopies. It was the heartbeat of the herbivore world, a signal that life, stubborn and armored, endured even in the face of relentless predation. The decline. By the end of the Jurassic, Stegosaurus was fading. New environments favored faster, more adaptable herbivores, Camptosaurus, Dryosaurus, and the early ancestors of the hadrosaurs that would dominate the Cretaceous. The great armor-bearer was out of place in this new world. Its body, perfected for a different time, became a relic. By 145 million years ago, Stegosaurus vanished from the fossil record. But its design endured. Nature remembered the idea, armor, intimidation, defense, and used it again in Ankylosaurus, Cychania, and Euoplocephalus, descendants in spirit if not in blood. The lineage of the shield lived on long after the shield itself was gone. The legacy of the shield. When the first Stegosaurus fossils were uncovered in 1877 by Othniel Charles Marsh, the world was unprepared for what it saw. Plates the size of dinner trays. Spikes longer than swords. And yet, a skull barely large enough to hold a fist. It was as if nature had built a tank and forgotten the driver. For decades, reconstructions were wrong. Plates arranged flat like shingles, tails dragging in the dirt. Only in the late 20th century did paleontology restore its true posture. Tail raised, plates erect, head low, alert and balanced. The Stegosaurus we know today is no lumbering brute. It is a marvel of design, a creature that turned vulnerability into artistry. When people stand before its skeleton in museums, they often laugh at its brain size. But intelligence is measured in survival, not calculation. And by that measure, Stegosaurus was brilliant. For 20 million years, it defied extinction. It fed the predators, shaped the vegetation, taught the world that even armor can be beautiful. The silent defender. The afternoon fades in the Morrison Valley. The heat begins to die. In the distance, thunder rolls, not from storms, but from the footsteps of giants. A lone Stegosaurus stands by the riverbank, its plates glowing crimson in the sunset. A shadow moves beyond the trees, a predator watching. The herbivore does not run. It lowers its head, shifts its weight, tail rising like a drawn blade. In that moment, the earth holds its breath. Predator and prey, balance and chaos, life and death, all hang suspended in the golden air. Then, slowly, the shadow retreats. The defender remains. The world moves on, and the river carries the reflection of its plates downstream, ripples of red fading into dusk. The age of giants is far from over, but for now, the armored one stands guard. It is the sound of silence, the sound of a survivor, the sound of Stegosaurus.